name is Taylor, and I am the founder and artistic director of Opera Cecilia.
And my name is Taylor Gonzaga, yours truly T, executive director of Opera Cecilia.
And together we run the Savvy Soprano podcast, which is a podcast series basically about all things opera, both the salty and the unsalty, the seasoned and not seasoned, as you will. If you hear pitter patters of teeny tiny little feet in the background, that's because we have now 3 dogs running around our house because we don't know when to stop. But we have 3 sweet pups, so if you hear them running around, it's kind of just like you're in our living room with us, I guess. So, kind of fun.
For those of you that have been following us on social media, we recently took a trip to New York because Taylor was part of a program that culminated in a performance in Carnegie Hall.
Yeah, that was super fun. It was definitely like a bucket list experience for me as a performer to get to be in such a historic venue. I had an absolute blast just spending time in New York. As you know, kind of from following us, if you do follow us, we're from the Pacific Northwest. So we're kind of from a different part of the United States that has a really different vibe. So it is a cultural difference between here and New York City. But I love both where we live and New York for different reasons. Tawny's got to come with me as my support system, which was absolutely wonderful. And we got to see some dear friends while we were there too. And it was just like all around a good time. I sang Musetta's Waltz from Puccini's La Bohème. And I sang a beautiful duet from Monteverdi's Coronation of Poppea, and I did a little bit of ensemble work in a Don Giovanni scene, so overall it was a super good time.
Yeah, and one thing I didn't realize is that Carnegie Hall wasn't like a giant concert venue. It was actually a building that had multiple halls.
Oh yeah, I guess you kind of like, you see the grand hall, like the big one where the full orchestras perform in a lot of the pictures, but you also see a lot of the recital hall that I performed in. I believe it's pronounced the Weil Recital Hall. Mm-hmm. Hopefully I'm not wrong in that. And
I mean, it's named after Kurt Weill. Is it?
I think, please, somebody reach out and correct us if we're wrong. It might be named after somebody else, but somebody in the building that worked for Carnegie pronounced it Weil Recital Hall. So like maybe we're completely off in that. Maybe that was just a assumption that we made. But yeah, I sang in the recital hall. Obviously, there's a couple different halls in there, a couple different performance spaces, but all of them are absolutely beautiful and opulent, and all of them have had historic performers in them. So it was just such a rewarding experience. And the program that I was with was so unique and one of a kind. Shout out to the Vincero Academy, run by Abdil Vasquez. For those fellow Vincero alumni who are listening, I think they can attest as well to the fact that the program is super rewarding to be a part of. You get a huge bang for your buck in paying for a role study program. It's definitely not like a pay to sing, because everybody has equal opportunities for performance. Everybody has an equal amount of master classes relative to the amount of roles that they are studying, and you get to sing the entirety of the role for, your buddies in the program.
And to clarify, this podcast is not sponsored by Vincero Academy. You just had a personal experience that was positive, so you wanted to give a shout out.
Yeah, so I just wanted to give a shout out to Abdil. If they want to sponsor us, that's great. But we won't spend too much more time on that. But that was the organization that I was a part of that led to that experience. So there's just a little insight there. There's definitely a wider idea behind that. Is there are like a plethora of different ways to receive your training as an artist these days, especially in like an endemic, or like we're not really technically post-COVID because COVID still very much exists, and we want to continue to not ignore that fact, but we're in a better state than we were before. We're not complete quarantine in most parts of the world, at least not in the States. And so, but because of the pandemic, I feel like a lot of things a lot of alternative paths kind of open themselves up for singers. That's sort of the optimistic end. A lot of industry crud sort of showed itself too, that I've made plenty of salty social media posts about. But I also think that some very innovative ways to engage in your artistic training and improve in your craft as a singer have come out of the pandemic too, which is very cool.
So according to Wikipedia, which is the absolute easiest way to find information.
I need to know more history behind Carnegie Hall.
Apparently. The hall was actually named after persons Joan and Sanford I. Weil. I want to say Weil because in my experience it's like a German name. Is that correct?
Typically it is, which is why I think
equated
Kurt it Weill. To Kurt Weill. That makes sense that it was named after donors and patrons, of course. But at the same time, I'm not entirely sure if we pronounce their name Weil or Weil, so it could go either way. So our apologies if we're pronouncing the name incorrectly. We made an assumption about it being named after an artist, I guess, that was kind of produced a lot of stuff in New York. But I'm sure Kurt Weill has other things named after him. So that was my own lack of education.
It might actually be named Weil Hall, actually. So that might be on us. Because, we thought it was Kurt Weill. And Kurt Weill is definitely pronounced with a V sound here for the American audience.
It's funny because I'm such a history nerd when it comes to places like the Metropolitan Opera or opera houses, but when it comes to concert halls, I am not very well versed in my history, so I probably should have done a little bit more research out the bat, but we all kind of know the weight artistically that the name Carnegie Hall carries with it. Right. And especially if you're an artist from the States, but really around the world, the venue's very well known. And there's been a lot it's really the legacy of the performers that have sung in that hall or played in that hall that made me value and appreciate the experience of getting to sing there so much. It kind of felt like you were a part of history in a way. So it was extremely rewarding.
So what was your experience? Because I remember you mentioning a few things about how it went in Carnegie Hall backstage, that maybe some things that surprised you. Could you give me a rehash of that again?
The only thing that was kind of surprising, it was both surprising and non-surprising at the same time, is the fact that the venue is very strict. And so they have a very well-oiled machine of how they run things, which I completely respect. And they have to make sure that it's historically preserved too. But we had our little backstage performer space that we hung out in, and that was the only place that we were allowed to be. There was a hall corridor near us that we could not cross over into. If we went too far, we'd be encroaching on potentially another venue's space within the building. They were very, very strict about that. They were very strict about how the amount of time we had for our dress rehearsal and when we were allowed to go out after the performance to see our loved ones and the other people who came to support us, which was very interesting. The whole entire concert, though, from beginning to end, between the way Vincero Academy handled it and the audience that showed up for our concert, including some very high up singers and coaches in the industry, everybody was so warm and wonderful and supportive. So it was so wonderful to see that in an industry that can be kind of a mixed bag with sometimes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of strictness. There's a lot of expectations in this industry, especially if you're performing really well-known repertoire. And I was performing a very famous aria, but there was nothing but support and encouragement from both my fellow singers in the program and the administrators and audience members. So it was just wonderful to have that opportunity.
What I found really weird, personally, is that they were such sticklers about recording inside the venues.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense because they want the venue to be presented professionally, and they also want everything to be put together in a certain way. So I understood and respected it, but at the same time, it wasn't as strict as there were definitely people that broke the rules a little bit.
I just straight up don't understand why there was such a big secrecy, because none of the works that were performed, to my understanding, had any sort of copyright that couldn't be duplicated.
It didn't have anything to do with
I didn't understand why people couldn't have their phones out and record their loved ones.
Well, it didn't have anything to do with Vincero. It just had to do with the hall itself.
And I'm not talking about Vincero. I'm talking about the hall itself. For some reason, they had a policy of no recordings.
I don't know. I think it's just like a professional standard. I understand it because some people will like record with their or take pictures with their flash on and stuff like that, and it can be really distracting to the performers. And so I think they just kind of like set a precedence as like a blanket rule for it. But I don't know, it's a little stricter than I would have it personally if I were running a venue like that. But I don't know, what do I know, you know? I'm not in that profession, I guess. So I respect it. We completely respect it at Opera Cecilia, but it was interesting to see exactly how well oiled of a machine it really was, and how particular it was.
Speaking of a well-oiled machine, we ended up getting some rush tickets to a show called Some Like It Hot that was performing off-Broadway, wasn't it?
On Broadway.
On Broadway.
On Broadway.
It was on Broadway.
Very much on Broadway.
Okay. Well, I'm not versed in that particular sphere, but I wanted to go see a show in New York, the strip of theaters, which there's tons of. I had no idea. I thought it was just like maybe 20, but...
Full disclosure, this was Tanis's first time in New York.
Yes, in case that didn't come across. But I wanted to go see a show that I had not seen before. So Phantom of the Opera did not call my attention. I was not interested in... What were some of the other ones that you were posing for us?
Well, there's like Phantom of the Opera, Wicked, I wanted to see Hadestown, which I still think would have been really great to see.
And I was down for seeing that, but unfortunately it just wasn't in our budget.
Way too much money for the last minute tickets.
Yeah, so, and that
but
show...
in advance tickets are more expensive. So if you want to do Broadway right, go for like last minute rush, because you can get them for like $20 to $40 a piece.
And there was this one website that we actually found it on. What was it?
Today Tix was the one that I was using.
It was not Today.
No, it was Broadway for Broke People.
Broadway for Broke People, not a sponsor, but if you're broke like us.
No, that's just like, that's not even like sponsorable stuff. That's just like how to navigate the city if you're an artist or an arts lover and you want to engage in that stuff. But anyway, we just kind of like meandered the streets of Broadway and went into various theaters to see what was still offering rush tickets. Some theaters don't offer rush too, so we had to like figure out.
That's what we ran into with Hadestown, wasn't it?
Yeah, they didn't offer rush.
No, it was with 6.
And you could do same day tickets, but they were like $140 a piece. They were really expensive to like purchase last minute, so we were like,
for us at least.
At least for us, yeah. But then there was Some Like It Hot's box office was open. We went in there and they were like, oh, we still have orchestra level seats for like $40 a piece. I was like, heck yeah, we're going to take that opportunity.
Yep. So we jumped in there and we saw some really great performers.
Oh my gosh, it was so much fun.
It was great. Everyone was like top tier. They were great dancers, great actors. It was a very different style from the film style that we dip into.
Yeah.
But it was still very well done, and the timing was spot on. The pacing of the entire show, I was just completely blown away.
Well, it was such a well-written show. It was such a powerful and uplifting message. I loved how it preached, to a certain extent, that idea of like acceptance of everybody and letting everyone live their life fully and authentically the way that they were meant to, or the way that feels natural to them. But it didn't come off as preachy. It had the show had a very clear message behind it, but it handled the thematic material so well that it just felt like human stories that were being told. It didn't feel like it was ever in your face or anything like that. It didn't feel over the top. It was just so... It was a wonderful diversity of characters that were portrayed in such a natural and beautiful way. It was so much fun to watch. It was so uplifting, and I just felt so much joy. I mean, you're really picky about shows, and I have not seen you shoot up that fast for a standing O in a really long time. So shout out to Some Like It Hot. If you have the chance to see it on Broadway, do not hesitate to go see it. People should prioritize that show.
Yes, it's fantastic. And you also managed to dip and see a show at the Met. You saw an opera at the Met. So tell me about that.
to be completely transparent about my relationship with the Metropolitan Opera.
It's complicated.
It's complicated. I was not full disclosure, super happy with the way they treated their artists during the pandemic. And I've competed for the Met competition a few times, and overall that was a good experience. I haven't won or advanced or placed or anything, but I know those competitions are hard to do that in, so I know I'm not the only one. Maybe someday, but I did have some issues with the way they treated their artists during the pandemic. And so I had mixed feelings about the house and stuff, but the Met is the Met, and it's a beautiful cultural landmark. And I think that just like every really, really big organization, it has its good and its bad. You know, you could say the same thing about big corporations that a lot of us have emotional attachments to, like Disney, for example. Mm-hmm. Disney has its good things and it's like not so great things because it's just big.
There may be issues administratively with how something is handled, but the good thing about that is that administratively, things change administratively. Like you have people that come in and take new leadership, new ownership. They take something in a different direction. And I think it's safe to say that a lot of people out there, including myself, would like to see the Met do things more differently.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest Peter Gelb fan, the person who is currently kind of running the show over there.
Pew, pew, shots fired.
I'm sorry. It's just my opinion. I mean, all due respect. I respect everybody in this industry, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I have to agree with their ways of doing things. You know what I mean?
And I think at the end of the day, I would have to say that you can still find a lot of great singing at the Met.
Oh, of course you can.
And that's primarily why we want to go.
Yeah. And so my friend and I got the opportunity to see Elixir of Love. We sat up in the quote unquote, it's called the family circle section. Which is, I don't know why exactly they call it that, other than the fact that I think it's where people like with kids go. That's the best thing that I can.
People take kids to the Met
I
Opera?
Don't know. Well,
I want to see that.
There's some interactive shows, like they did an interactive production of Magic Flute that I guess was like an all ages, like kids type thing. And so they do some of that, but I don't know why it's called Family Circle. If anybody knows why that section, the upper balcony, the uppermost balcony of the Met is called the Family Circle, please let me know. Tell me. Somebody reach out to us. DM us at Opera Cecilia or something. But anyway, that's where we sat. We got the cheapo tickets, but we did not. I loved the fact that they had personalized subtitles according to somebody's language in your own seat.
That's really cool. That's a great update.
Very, very cool. So I really enjoyed that. It was nice to not have the subtitles right above the show on the stage, because sometimes that can get a wee bit distracting for me. I actually liked the model of them being in the seats. That being said, not every company can afford that, so I'm fine with them being on the stage. But if I get the option between the two, it's nice to have the little screen one, so you can look down at it, but then when text is repeated, you don't see it pop up over and over, and you can focus more on what's happening on stage. I like that. And this production of Elixir of Love was very well directed, very well sung, and it just was so entertaining. It was so funny. The way they did it really highlighted the humor in the plot. For those of you who don't know a lot about Elixir of Love, I encourage you to look up the plot. It's basically, about this guy who gets sold. He gets kind of duped, and he gets sold alcohol that is being,
so basically,
masqueraded as a love potion.
He gets taken by the power of placebo.
Yeah. Well, he gets taken by the power of
live.
A little bit too much to drink is what he gets taken by. And the power of spirits. And it's this whole entire very, very comical romance between Nemorino and Adina, and it's just so well highlighted in that production. So that was so much fun to watch. It looked like the performers were genuinely having so much fun on stage.
Yeah.
And I think that, and I felt that in Some Like It Hot too. When performers look like they love the crap out of what they're doing, it is so fun to watch. It makes the show so much more wonderful. And that just goes to show that I honestly think that when performers really look like they're genuinely enjoying themselves, that's that's a reflection on the crew as well, and the overall dynamic of the production. You know, either they're extremely convincing and good at faking it, or the dynamics of that production was wonderful during the rehearsal process, and everyone got along really well, and everyone felt like they were well taken care of, and that reflected in the performances they gave on stage.
And would you say that growing up, that was your understanding or your belief of how it was backstage and what it meant to be a performer?
It definitely was. That's what I wanted to believe. I think when I was younger and I got into college and I went to some pay to sing yaps when I was in undergrad and I was like just starting out and stuff like that, I found that was not always the case, and that there's definitely toxicity in this art form too, and it's a really mixed bag depending on the people you work with. But I do want to believe, and I have come to find, that the majority of the people that you'll interact with in this industry are wonderful, very well-meaning people. Are there people that are out there for themselves, or that are catty and mean and act dumb for selfish gain? Of course there are, but and I will forever be salty about people at the administrative level that use those traits to take advantage of young artists, or anybody at the emerging level, whether you're young or not. But that being said, I do think that most people out there are just trying to do their best and survive in the industry that we've created and hopefully make it better.
Do you think there's because I've heard that there's a level of self-sacrifice that artists somehow are pushed into, or they feel like are a part of the gig as they mature and grow into knowing more parts of this opera industry?
I think it is preached at from the absolute beginning of a young singer's journey to well into their professional career, that there's a level of self-sacrifice that comes with this job. It's this idea of self-sacrifice, this idea of, there are things that you're going to have to give up or come to terms with, or time in your life that you're going to have to give up if you really want to be successful at this craft.
I mean, I believe I got this information from you because I don't follow people in the opera sphere as closely as you do, but it's my understanding that the soprano Lisette Oropeza said in some interview or at some point in time that she decided that she wasn't going to have children for the sake of this art form because she wanted to give it her all?
No, she just kind of like felt like she didn't really have room for both, and so she chose which for her own life made the most sense. And that is not something that we bring up judgmentally, because I think the decision to not have kids is a very legitimate one that people have a right to make. And if you don't want to have kids, you don't want to have kids, and that is 100% okay, and that's what you choose. And if that's the life that makes you happy, then you have every right to pursue that.
Right. You know? I think the concern that I have for that particular decision is not the decision itself, but potentially the context around that decision being, for example, if she felt like she didn't really have a choice, like she had to pick one or the other, I think that's more indicative of the industry and how it's laid out.
I mean, that's sort of what the article insinuated. I'm not entirely sure if that's what she meant or if there was more context. Sometimes articles are like abridged.
Oh yeah, of course.
But at the same time, it does bring up an interesting point, like how, like, she is a very, very, very skilled singer and extremely professional and very good at what she does and has gone very far.
Yes, very
She's one of the most well-known sopranos. She's wonderful to emerging artists for the, like so many wonderful things happening. Yes. And so if that was what she wanted to wholeheartedly dedicate her life to, and that's what she freely chose, then that's wonderful. And it's a worthy ambition. That's how she chose to live her life. That being said, there are other performers out there that have chosen to have a family and do this art form as well, that have also gone to those prestigious places and proven that you can have both, if that's the life you want to live too. It just really depends on what people want for themselves. But what I don't like in this industry, which is I think what we're kind of getting at with this podcast episode, is the fact that so many people are made to feel like they can't have both.
Right.
Are made to feel like it has to be one over the other, that there's no support system for them to do more than one thing or pursue multiple things in their life, whether it be having a family and being a professional performer, whether it be being a professional performer, but also pursuing something else in your career, you know, being a multifaceted artist. I feel like there's this weird stigma too coming from that stupid phrase that I hope I never hear uttered from anybody in the professional world again, that those who can't do teach. I think that is the stupidest thing anyone's ever said. I think that warrants its own episode or handful of episodes on its own. Oh, for sure.
But before we move on and talk more about that, I want to say that we personally had an experience where in our undergrad degree, we were both applying for grad school at the time, and we had just started dating. But I think there was a professional baritone that was brought in for one of our Music at Midweek concerts, and we got a chance to talk to him as a class, and one of the things that he basically said unprompted was to not get married.
Yeah.
Because when you get married,
straight up said that.
You end up having kids, and then you stop doing the opera stuff. He kind
of said, if you remember this, I don't know if you remember this, and I don't know if this can't be a direct quote because this was years ago, but I vividly remember him saying something along the lines of, don't get married, don't settle down because you'll get too happy. And then you'll get complacent. Like somehow happiness and contentment breeds complacency. Maybe it does in some people because they're genuinely okay with coasting. They've gotten to the place in life they want to be and they're fine just staying there for a while, you know? But just because you get married or you have kids does not mean that you don't have drive in you.
Right.
And just because you become a mom or a dad or a parent of some kind, or because you decide to have a significant other or a partner, whether it's a marriage or just a really serious relationship, you know, that does not mean that you cannot be dedicated to your craft, that you cannot be a driven and determined person. And I was so mad because people kept saying this to me like over and over again, especially after we got engaged. I mean, granted, we got engaged pretty young. We got engaged at 23. And some people consider that really young. We felt like it was the perfect time for us, and we stand by that. And I'm so glad we did it. Yeah. But for a lot of other people, my parents straight up were like, and I love my parents, and they've always been super supportive of what I choose. But like, my parents were straight up like, you're going to get married and then you're going to have kids and your life is going to be over. At least that's sort of what
I mean, from the beginning, your parents have always been of the opinion that once you have kids, life stops.
That's kind of what it felt like. And I'm sure that that's not entirely like the whole picture of their opinion. And we've had more in-depth conversations since then. But at the time, I was just like, just because I want to be a wife and mother does not mean that I can't also be a successful career woman. Does it mean that every once in a while my family's going to have to be prioritized over my career because they're the people in my life I'm responsible for? Yes.
Yes, and I believe we should be doing that. I think there's still a subset of the population that feels like you need to go gung-ho towards your career, but that's, in my opinion, that's the exact kind of thought process that kept labor unions from forming and coming together. It's very pro-company or pro-corporation to think that way.
Yeah.
And it's very, like in the sense that, oh, you have to work overtime and you have to be available on weekends. And yes, people do get ahead that way, but they do it at a price that they...
Well, it creates this invisible rule book. There's like this invisible rule book around a career in the arts. And this happens not just in the arts, it happens in other businesses too. But there's this invisible rule book that says you have to do X, Y, and Z, think like this, act like this, wear this thing, sing this repertoire. You have to have a package, an aria package that looks exactly like this. All of this BS. And you have, if you follow the rules perfectly, you're basically guaranteed a professional career. And that's kind of how it's preached at the conservatory university level.
Right.
At least that's sort of how it was presented to me at times. And I've come to find that, first of all, none of it guarantees you crap.
Right.
There's that. You could still do all the right things, dot all the right I's, cross all the right T's, and not have a successful career. Not get into anything.
Yeah.
By no fault of your own, just because everything's a giant crapshoot and you were not taught entrepreneurial skills. And so you didn't know how much of a self-starter you may have had to be to do some of the things you wanted to do.
I think that's because a big component of this is just the education system in the States.
Yeah.
It was created at a time when manufacturing jobs were the norm.
Yeah.
And you were taught how to be a part of a system, and you were taught a very linear path. The whole system in the United States, educational system, is about following a path.
It was kind of preached to us from a very, very young age. And this happens in other countries too, not just in our country, but it was preached from a very young age for us that life, the rest of life, if we did everything correctly, would kind of be like grade school. We would just continue to move a grade up. We would continue to level up. If we did these things and pleased the right people, we would stay in the system and the system would benefit us. And we're coming to find, especially post the worst part of COVID-19, that the system doesn't benefit us as much as it says it's going to, even if we do make all the right moves in their eyes.
Right.
And so for us, I think the entire existence of Opera Cecilia in general revolves around the fact that we sort of have to, especially in the arts world, demand the life we want. And nobody else is fully going to advocate for us except ourselves. And there's a freedom and an empowerment in that that's beautiful, but there's also scariness to that. And I truly do not think it means you have to be like an entrepreneur and start your own business. Mm-hmm. I just posted this thing on Opera Cecilia that you recommended I post, so you were a part of that. That said, it's okay if you don't want to be an entrepreneur. We love you too.
Right, because not everyone's built that way. Not everyone wants to have to think about these things constantly. Not
everybody wants that kind of lifestyle, and that's completely fine.
Some people just want to go to work, get their paycheck, and they deserve to be happy too.
And there should be an environment in the arts for both kinds of artists. Mm-hmm. The movers and the shakers and the innovators, and those who take the current industry and make it better because of their presence in it.
Yes.
That being said, what's difficult right now in the current landscape of the industry, at least in the States, it's different depending on the country you live in. So my international friends, feel free to give us feedback on what it's like in the arts world in your country. But for the US, it kind of is a gig economy. So it feels like it's inevitable that you have to be an entrepreneur no matter what you do.
Yeah.
There has to be some entrepreneurial element to it, or you will have a very hard time making enough money to survive in this industry, because we virtually do not have an industry in the States where singers can just perform for in-state companies or just perform within their own home state and sustain a career just off of performance. We don't have a troupe system at opera companies in the States anymore.
No.
And if we do have a troupe system, it's like for very small grassroots type things that can't always pay a living wage to their artists right away. I mean, we're not even paying our artists as much as we want to right now because we're not making as much as we want to right now. So we're literally doing everything we possibly can, but this company's growth is just going to take time, and we've accepted that.
Yeah, if you want to help us on that journey, please hop on over to operacecilia.com. We have a tab on there that you can support us. You can do direct donation, set it up as a recurring donation through Patreon, or just send it to us as a one-time donation, as much as you would like. go to our merch store in that same tab. We have a number of products. We just got the proof for our mug, which you really love. It's great. It's double facing. It's got one of our logos on one side, one on the other. So cozy up with a cup of tea in our Opera Cecilia mug.
Yeah.
The Opera Lovers Playbook is now live, so you can find that on our website as a printable, or go to Amazon.com and look it up.
And toward the end of this podcast, I'm going to elaborate more on exactly what that is.
So let's do that right now.
The Opera Lovers Playbook is a way that we're kind of being innovative and entrepreneurial as a company. It's kind of a baby that we birthed creatively between the two of us, but we also had a fantastic collaborator on it that I wanted to shout out. Her name is Christina Kent. She runs Mindful Sound Studio. Many people in the opera community on Instagram have shared her posts or seen her posts at one time or another. She posts wonderful words of wisdom for opera singers, debunking a lot of the toxic aspects of being in this art form. And just basically saying that you can create your own rule book and you can really do this art form your way that makes you the most happiest in your life. And that's kind of what the Opera Lovers Playbook is all about. It's not just for emerging opera singers. It's for everybody who loves to engage with the art form. So just fans of opera would really enjoy this book too, but it is really geared toward we have a special place in our heart for emerging singers, so it is kind of geared largely toward that demographic. Right. And what it is it's basically a book for the in-betweens. It's a book for those anxious moments where we're doing all the logistical stuff that it takes to have a career in this industry. We're waiting on audition results. We're on a plane to a gig. We're in the grind in between. And sometimes that grind can be super stressful. And so this is sort of a mental health tool for singers. It's something that has fun crossword puzzles, word searches, journal prompts, thanks to our wonderful friend Christina. And it even has personality quizzes we wrote ourselves and really, really fun stuff so that you can put the playfulness back into what we do. Because if we don't enjoy this, then why are we doing it? Why are we enduring all the stupid stuff, all the BS in this industry if we don't absolutely love what we do?
Right. I think what this book is, it's a great addition to your anxiety coping mechanisms. And I think on a subconscious level, you created something that would have helped you out a lot backstage. Yeah. Because sometimes you just need something to doodle on to get your mind off of what is happening in the frustrating parts of this industry. Sometimes you need to journal out something. Sometimes you need to remind yourself, write down a reminder of why you love this.
Yeah.
And I think we want to keep creating these. So there's two versions out right now. There's the Woodland edition and then there's the Garden edition. They're both beautiful and they have the same exact thing going on. It's just an aesthetic difference. So we encourage you to go on over, get yourself a copy, support us here at Opera Cecilia as we support emerging artists.
Yeah, and the nature aesthetic comes from the fact that we as a company are, the founders of this company are nature lovers. We're from a part of the world that's very beautiful naturally, and nature holds a special place in our heart because it serves as the backdrop for our filmed productions. And so it's a free set, but it's not just about that. It's also about just grounding ourselves in the earth and that being a part of the artistry that we create as a company. And it sort of brings a wholesomeness back into the art form. It removes some of the elitism and it's calming, you know? So there's a lot of different reasons why nature is incorporated into our brand and the aesthetic of this book. And so overall, this is just meant to calm and it's meant to help soothe the parts of this career, or soothe your mind during the parts of this career where it can get really stressful and overwhelming, because I've been there, done that. I am diagnosed generalized anxiety disorder. I've had mental health issues my entire life. And so this book would have been a godsend to me, especially during my college years. And so I hope that it is a helpful tool for everyone who considers purchasing.
Yeah, and I think along those lines, those experiences that you had in undergrad and continue to have on occasion, our next project that we're going to be having is Love Letters to Arias I Fear, which is coming out sometime in late February is our hope. Yeah. Give me a rundown on the concept you have for that, because we haven't talked in depth about this, but I feel like you have a lot of opinions and desires about how this project should turn out.
It's cool because at the beginning we were of this podcast episode, we were sort of talking about the topic of self-sacrifice. And for me, Love Letters to the Arias I Fear is addressing all of the things that prevented me from fully expressing myself as the artist I wanted to be earlier, that stunted me for a while and even prevented my vocal technique progress for a while. Because, and this is something I always emphasize with my students in my private studio too, singing is brain training. There is so much about our field, our art form, that is so deeply psychological. There's so much about the act of singing that is deeply psychological. And if that is not addressed in the studio, in college degree programs, in life in general, if mental health is not addressed, then we have such a huge barrier to our success. And that's kind of where this project was birthed from, was debunking some of these myths that are told to young artists early on in their careers, that were told to me, that limited me and stunted me. They didn't motivate me. They didn't just tell me a harsh truth, because they don't have to be true for you, you know? Mm-hmm. And so I actually have a series of prompts. We've been systematically on the Opera Cecilia Instagram page announcing which arias I'm using for Love Letters to the Arias I Fear. The way that the art film will be formatted is it has 5 iconic arias from the lyric soprano canon, which is the type of repertoire that I sing. 5 very famous pieces that have a lot of expectations on them when performers sing them. And they're all arias that I've been afraid of singing because of those expectations. Hence,
Arias You Fear.
Yes.
Tell me about the love letter part, though.
That's my own original poetry. It's a love letter to myself as an artist. It's me being able to indulge in the pride of how far I've come, but it's also me not shying away from the painful parts of pursuing this art form and being in this industry, and the things that have, like I said before, stunted my growth, both physically and emotionally as a singer. And it is also a love letter to these arias, because at the end of the day, I ardently love this music. Mm-hmm. I love it so much. And I think it was kind of like, you know how you were like, you can love something too much or hold it too close or get too perfectionistic about it to the point where it's like a little baby bird. And if you're not gentle with it in your hands, you can kind of hurt it on accident, you know? Full disclosure, when I was a little kid, a very big example of this that's very metaphorically poignant to this point is when I was like 1.5, 2 years old, we had 2 pet goldfish. Their names were Chloe and Cleo. Poor Chloe was like 2-year-old me's favorite fish, and I loved the crap out of that fish. And one time my mom took the fish tank down to clean it and give them like fresh water and stuff. And I decided that I was going to reach my little hand into the tank and take out Chloe because I wanted to give her a hug. And as a result of giving her a hug, I accidentally, as you can imagine, killed the fish. And 2-year-old little me did not know any better, did not have bad intentions with that interaction, of course. But I was so sad. Like it was devastating for me as a kid. And it's something that's kind of anecdotally brought up as this metaphor now in my life, where it's like, obviously I've forgiven myself for that now, years later, even though that was a very devastating thing for me, because 2-year-old me didn't know any better. But at the same time, it just kind of goes to show that if you hold something so close and you obsess over it so much, sometimes you can hold it too tight and you can prevent yourself from even engaging with it at all. Mm-hmm. Or you can prevent yourself from, or you can almost destroy it for yourself in a way because it's just too much.
If you hold it too preciously.
Yeah, and I hope that metaphor makes sense. But like I just revealed that I accidentally killed a fish when I was 2. But
another way of phrasing it might be, if you love something, set it free.
Yeah. There's this level of freedom that comes with love, and everybody says that if you love someone, set it free. But it's also if you love something, set it free. If you love this art form, allow your art form to show itself for all of its imperfections. Don't hold so close to it and be so afraid of showing it that you just never let it reveal itself to the world, because then it's just going to be a giant secret your entire life. And that's kind of what Love Letters to the Arias, I fear, is all about, is me showing who I truly want to be as an artist to the world for the first time in hopes of inspiring others to do the same. And the love letters come in the form of original poetry that I write that are kind of interweaved with the arias. There's 5 chapters to this, short chapters to this art film, and each of them feature an aria and a poem. And chapter 1 is going to be Chi bel sogno from Puccini's La Rondine. And it meditates on the idea on the phrase, I am worthy of taking up space. And I kind of discuss what it's like to feel the weight of the legacy of all these great performers as a singer, and how intimidating that used to be to me, and how I felt like I would never be able to sing this music perfectly. And a little quote from the parts of the poetry I've written so far are, I am worthy of taking up space. My art is space and time. My art is history. I reach into my soul and pull out music that served as a battle cry to my ancestors. I am worthy of the legacy. With me, this art takes one more breath, and because of me, this art touches one more soul. Chapter 2 is Quando men vo from Puccini's La Bohème, which I just sang in Carnegie Hall. And the concept is my sensuality is my own. My sensuality as a person is something that I used to be very afraid of showing for a variety of reasons, very shy about. But the excerpt of my poetry from that is, I am more than the gaze of one who never has lived a moment in my body, who has never seen with these eyes, kissed with these lips, or held another in these arms. My power comes with several dimensions. It is in my complexity that one will find my sensuality, for there will always be something new to discover, qualities that are not special because they are untouched, but instead because of the power they have to touch others, a power wielded by none but me.
So that's a little bit of a sneak peek into what you can expect with Love Letters to Arias, I fear. So please follow us so you can get some tickets for that and support us.
Tickets are available via Eventbrite. Our Eventbrite portal link is in the bio of our Instagram page. It's also going to be on our website. But if you search us up in Eventbrite on the website as well, you'll be able to find us if you search the name of our event. Tickets are donation based. The suggested donation is $5, but you can donate anything as low as just a little bit over $1, like $1.03, I think is their minimum. And it's all money that goes towards supporting the future of Opera Cecilia. So you're supporting the arts in the process, supporting our little company, and we're hoping it's something that inspires you.
There was another thought bubble that we've been talking about actually recently that ties in very well to the idea of if you love something, set it free. And the full quote, I believe, is, if you love something, set it free. If it returns, it's yours. And if not, it never was. And what we've kind of been thinking about is the quote of, if it's meant to be, it'll happen. And can you talk a little bit about your thoughts of what you thought that meant?
I used to think when I was younger that if it's meant to be, it will happen. Meant that if everything isn't easy in the process of getting it, if everything doesn't just land in my lap, then I wasn't meant to have that thing. And that's kind of what the phrase can imply sometimes. It's like, if it's meant to be, it will feel like it's meant to be. Things will just fall into place.
Right.
But what that phrase sometimes, what people neglect to address when it comes to the concept of if it's meant to be, it will happen, is that the meant to be part isn't going to come without struggle. And that everything in this life that is worth achieving, I truly believe, at least everything that's been worth achieving in my life has come with challenges and unbelievable obstacles that I have to conquer. And getting to the other side of it feels so wonderful, even if there was that challenge. Sometimes it feels more wonderful for that challenge, depending on the thing. And so I used to think there's been times in my career where I had a particularly hard bout with audition rejections. Or when I first applied for grad schools, I didn't get accepted into any of them. And that was really rough. You know, it took me 2 tries to get a good offer to grad school, but I did get one eventually. And the thing is, in those moments, I was like, if this isn't landing in my lap, if I'm not getting these things that I'm going out for, does that mean that I'm not meant to be a singer? I'm not meant to be an artist, when I feel like there's nothing else I can do that gives me a more personal sense of like authentically expressing myself? Why can I not imagine myself doing anything else other than this? But it's still so damn hard. Am I missing something? Is there some other thing I'm supposed to do? And if I did that thing, would everything be easy? And the truth is, nothing's going to be easy ever. And so it's not necessarily if it's meant to be, it will land in your lap. If it's meant to be, you will never lose the drive and the insatiable desire at the end of the day, when all is said and done, to keep pursuing it. Even if you have moments of dropped motivation or disappointment or needing to take a break, we're not talking about that. We're talking about like if you just low-key hate it, then maybe it's not meant to be and it won't happen. But if you still have that wonderful, insatiable desire and hunger to be a part of this art form, then it was meant for you on some level or another. Maybe you won't be the next Renee Fleming or Luciano Pavarotti, but we need other types of artists in this world besides just that. We need innovators. We need people who support smaller companies. We need art to go to demographics that don't typically get as much access to it. We don't just need the next big celebrity singer. It's great if that's what you become and you have a remarkable amount of power and influence that I hope you use for good.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic if that's the life that you choose and that you're really happy with. And if that's what was meant for you, great. But this art form, if you have an insatiable desire for it, is meant for you. Because that's not something that can be kicked. And that's the thing that's going to keep you going at the end of the day. This deep love for it. And that's another reason why this company is existing, is to help other artists never lose that, no matter how annoying things can get. Trying to pursue this art form and make a living doing it so you can do it all the time. The only reason that I'm concerned with making a living engaging in this art form is not because I want it to be some get-rich-quick scheme. This is not the industry to get into to get rich quick. I will tell you that, not at all. It's because I want to make a living doing this, and a comfortable one, because I want to be able to do this all the time. Because that's how much I love it.
That's a dream.
You know? And I feel like we have the capacity to change lives doing it, because art has proven to be one of the most politically, humanistically influential things in the world.
Yeah.
People are persuaded to vote for candidates because their favorite celebrity singer voted for them. That's how influential you can be as an artist. Whether I think there's a lot of layers to that, whether I think that's healthy or not, but that's just how our society is. So we're incredibly powerful in what we do in the world. But we're consistently, especially at the emerging artist level, disempowered for doing it in the way our current industry is set up, or we're preyed upon for the higher ups to earn more money. But we can bring opera back to wider audiences again by presenting it in new and innovative ways. And if you've been told, I've had a student that I recently was talking to that straight up has been told not to sing from people, or that she doesn't sound good. She's a wonderful singer. And she just had, her family just has different aesthetic tastes than her. And because it's not what, in their opinion, is their favorite type of singing, they think it's not good. So she's been shamed for the voice she authentically has. That's not fair.
No.
And if you've ever experienced that, please know that that does not mean that this art form is not meant for you. It just means that you haven't found the right audience that will appreciate you. And an audience has to be right for you just as much as you have to be right for that audience. It's not just about them.
Yeah.
It's about you too. And sometimes you just haven't found the right demographic. But that doesn't mean there isn't a following out there for you. I've seen a lot of real weird things gain a following in this world. So your singing can be one of them. There's literally a girl who sells farts in a jar and makes money off of that. If Fart in a Jar Lady can make money, then you can off of your beautiful singing voice. So you can do this.
On that note, folks.
Wow, that was not what I expected to say in a podcast ever, but whatever. This is where we're at.
Keep singing and keep listening to us. We'll bring you little tidbits of wisdom and we'll have some fun along the way. Hopefully.
Ooh, uncensored Taylor came out there for a second, but it's fine.
So until next time.
Yep. Until next time, we hope to see you around here again. We hope you continue to support OC. And thank you for everything you're doing for us. We love you all and have a wonderful rest of your day.